Captain stood in the massive hall of the Galactic Council station. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. Around him, aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some had 6 legs, others floated in gravity fields. A few looked almost human, but their eyes were too large or their skin shimmered with strange colors. This was humanity's first official meeting with the galaxy. After 30 years of faster-than-light travel, humans had finally been invited to join the Galactic Council. Felt the weight of his species on his shoulders. Everything he did here would shape how the galaxy saw humanity forever. Beside him, Lieutenant Wu checked her data pad. She was his tactical officer, sharp and quick-thinking. "The council members are ready for us," she said quietly. Her dark eyes scanned the room, always alert, always watching. Ambassador Nu walked ahead of them. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her face was calm, but knew she was nervous. This meeting would decide humanity's place in the galaxy. They entered the council chamber. It was circular, with seats rising in tiers all around them. Hundreds of aliens sat watching. At the center of the room stood a tall, insect-like creature. Its exoskeleton gleamed under the lights. This was the representative who had invited humanity. "Welcome, humans," his voice came through the translation device. It sounded hollow and echoing. "We have studied your species since your first FTL jump. We are pleased to offer you membership in our Galactic Council." Nu stepped forward. "We are honored by your invitation. Humanity wishes to join the galactic community in peace." Another alien stood. This one was covered in scales and had eyes like a lizard. High Commander represented the Dominion, one of the Council's most powerful military forces. "Your species comes from what we classify as a Class 3, said. His voice was deep and slow. "Your planet has extreme gravity, violent weather, dangerous predators. Most species in the galaxy could not survive one day on your Earth." Notice the whispers spreading through the chamber. Many aliens were looking at the humans with concern. Some even looked afraid. "Because of this," continued, "we must classify your species as you are physically stronger and more durable than most galactic citizens. For the safety of all species, we recommend humanity accept protectorate status. You would be under council guidance and protection." Nu's jaw tightened. Knew what she was thinking. Protectorate status meant humanity would have no real power. They would be treated like children who needed to be watched. "We appreciate your concern," Nu said carefully. "But humanity has governed itself successfully for thousands of years. We believe we can contribute as equal members." His antennae twitched. Perhaps a demonstration would help the Council understand human capabilities. "Lieutenant Wu, would you participate in our standard combat simulation?" Wu looked he nodded. She stepped forward into a marked circle on the floor. "What kind of simulation?" she asked. "A simple test," explained. "You will face holographic opponents. The simulation measures reaction time, strength, and tactical thinking. Do not worry, it is perfectly safe. Most species complete it in 15 to 20 minutes." The simulation started. Holographic enemies appeared around Wu. They moved fast, attacking from multiple directions. But to his eyes they seemed slow. Wu moved like water flowing between the attacks. Her training kicked in. She struck with precision, dodging and countering with ease. The simulation increased in difficulty. More enemies appeared. They moved faster. Wu adapted instantly. She used her environment, rolled under attacks, struck pressure points. Her breathing remained steady and controlled. 10 minutes passed. The aliens in the chamber were leaning forward now, watching intently. The simulation was at its highest difficulty level, something most species never reached. 12 minutes. Wu took a hit to her shoulder. She grunted but didn't slow down. Blood appeared where the holographic blade had connected with enough force to break skin. She kept fighting. "Stop the simulation," commanded. "She is injured." "I'm fine," Wu called out. "Continue." The simulation ran for 17 minutes before it ended. Wu stood in the center, breathing hard but still standing. The holographic enemies were all defeated. Silence filled the chamber. Then's voice broke it. The previous record for that simulation was 19 minutes, but that was set by a Dominion warrior after months of training. Lieutenant Wu, this was your first attempt. Yes, Wu said, walking back to her position. She wiped blood from her shoulder. Is that unusual? More whispers filled the room. Saw fear in some of the alien faces now. Others looked angry. An alien from the upper tiers stood. The human continued fighting while injured. This is not normal behavior. Most species would have stopped. The pain wasn't that bad, Wu said simply. Your pain tolerance is disturbing, another alien said. No civilized species should be able to ignore injury like that. Stood again. His scales seemed darker now. I withdraw my recommendation for protectorate status. I now recommend quarantine status. These humans are too dangerous. Dangerous? Nuss' voice was sharp. My officer completed your test. She followed your rules. How does that make us dangerous? Before anyone could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Santini snapped to attention. A communication came through the main display. A panicked alien face appeared on the screen. This is Outpost. We are under attack. The swarm has breached the outer rim. We need immediate. The transmission cut to static. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages. Grabbed his data pad and pulled up the galactic map. The outer rim was far from council space, but if the swarm was moving, nowhere was safe. What is the swarm? Asked. The insect alien's mandibles clicked nervously. A parasitic hive species. They consume everything in their path. We thought they were contained in the dead zones. If they have reached the outer rim, thousands of lives are at risk. Was already coordinating with his fleet. All military vessels will respond. Evacuation protocols are in effect. Null looked at, he knew what she was asking without words. He nodded. Ambassador, Null said loudly, cutting through the chaos. Humanity offers its assistance. We have 3 military ships in this sector. We can respond immediately. No, said quickly. You do not understand what you are offering. The swarm kills everything. Your species is untested in real combat. You would only die needlessly. Wu stepped forward. Blood still stained her uniform. With respect, Commander, you just said we are dangerous. Maybe it is time the galaxy sees exactly what humans can do when lives are at stake. Met's eyes. We did not come to the stars to hide when others need help. If you will not accept us as equals, then at least let us prove we deserve to be here. Stared at the humans for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. Very well, but understand this, if you go, many of you will not return. The swarm shows no mercy. Smiled grimly, then we will fit right in. As the council scrambled to organize their response, Wu and Null left the chamber. They had come to make peace with the galaxy. Instead, they were about to go to war. Behind them watched them leave. His translator picked up his quiet words to, "Did you see it? Even injured, even outnumbered, the human did not show fear. What kind of species evolves without fear?" Scales rippled. The kind that survives when everything else is trying to kill them. I think we made a mistake inviting them here. Why? Asked. Because, said slowly, I think we just showed the apex predators of Earth that they are not alone in the universe. And now they are hunting. The human ships arrived at station 6 hours before the council fleet. Colonel Sung-ho stood on the bridge of the transport vessel, watching the station through the viewport. Parts of it were dark. Other sections vented atmosphere into space. Small shapes moved across the hull, swarm creatures, eating through the metal. We should wait for the main fleet, said Fleet Admiral through the communication channel. The commander's voice was tense. We need full tactical data before engaging. Sung-ho looked at his tactical display. There are 15,000 civilians still alive in that station. Every hour we wait, hundreds die. A foolish attack will only add to the death count, replied. Then it's good we're not planning a foolish attack, Sung-ho said. He switched to his battalion channel. All units prepare for immediate deployment. We're going in. Colonel, the council has not authorized. Sung-ho cut the channel. He looked at his Marines. 200 of them the best Earth had sent to the stars. They checked their weapons and sealed their armor. Unlike the sleek, climate-controlled suits the council forces used, human armor was bulky and reinforced. It had to be. Humans came from a heavy-gravity world. Corporal 1 finished checking his rifle. He was young, barely 22, but his eyes were steady. Sir, scanners show the station's radiation levels are critical. Sections B through F are completely toxic. Good thing we brought rad meds, Sung-ho said. He pulled up the station map. The civilians are trapped in the central core. To reach them, we go through the toxic sections. Another Marine spoke up. Sir, the Council considers those sections unrecoverable. They plan to seal them off. The Council isn't from Earth, Sung-ho replied. We grew up in radiation. Our sun bombards us every day. Our planet has natural reactors in its crust. A little station radiation won't stop us. Dr. Mira joined them on the bridge. She was sent to study alien life. Now she would study the swarm. Her medical scanner was already active. I've reviewed the limited data on swarm biology. They're silicon-based, not carbon. Heat bothers them less than cold, and they're connected through some kind of hive mind. Weaknesses? Sung-ho asked. Unknown, but I'll find them. Mira's face was set with determination. The transport docked with the station. The airlock opened. Immediately, alarms blared. The atmosphere was toxic. Radiation warnings flashed. The Marines moved forward without hesitation. They entered Section B. Bodies lay everywhere, aliens who had tried to flee. The swarm had been thorough. The walls were covered in a black, organic substance that pulsed like it was breathing. Contact, a Marine shouted. Swarm creatures dropped from the ceiling. They looked like a nightmare combination of insect and crustacean. Multiple legs, snapping mandibles, and armored carapaces. They moved fast, scuttling toward the Marines. The humans opened fire. Pulse rifles lit up the corridor. The swarm creatures shrieked and charged. They were fast, but humans were faster. Sung-ho had studied Earth's military history. He knew humanity's advantage. Humans were endurance hunters. They could track prey for days. They could fight for hours. And most importantly, they never gave up. A swarm creature leaped at one. He, letting it crash into the wall. Before it could recover, he shot it 3 times in what looked like its head. It collapsed. They die like anything else, one said. The Marines pushed deeper. They moved through sections that made the station AI scream warnings, radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. The humans took pills and kept moving, temperatures that would cook unprotected flesh. The humans sealed their suits and advanced. They found the first survivors in Section D, a group of aliens huddled in a sealed room. When the Marines broke through, the aliens stared in shock. How are you alive? One asked. This section has been toxic for hours. We're human, a Marine said simply. We're used to it. The evacuation began. Marines escorted civilians back through the death zones. Sung-ho pushed forward with a smaller team. According to the station map, the swarm was nesting in Section F. They entered the nest. It was a scene from a horror story. The entire section had been transformed. Organic material covered everything. Eggs pulsed in the corners, and at the center, swarm creatures moved in organized patterns. They're building something, Mira whispered. Her scanner worked frantically. Look at the pattern. This isn't random. They're creating a breeding chamber. Then we burn it, Sung-ho said. Sir, we're outnumbered 50 to 1, a Marine pointed out. Good, Sung-ho replied. makes them easier to hit. What happened next would later be studied by every military academy in the galaxy. The humans didn't retreat. They didn't call for backup. They attacked. Sung-Ho led his team straight into the nest. They used grenades, fire, and close-quarters combat. When ammunition ran low, they used their knives. When the swarm tried to overwhelm them with numbers, the humans formed a circle and fought back to back. One found himself separated from the group. A dozen swarm creatures surrounded him. He was out of ammunition. His armor was cracked. By all logic, he should have died. Instead, he picked up a piece of broken metal and started swinging. The swarm creatures had never encountered anything like this. Prey was supposed to run. Prey was supposed to fear. This human was screaming and attacking with a piece of scrap metal. One killed 3 before the team reached him. He was covered in acid burns and cuts. His armor was barely holding together, but he was still standing. "I thought you might need help," Sung-Ho said, shooting another swarm creature. "I had it under control," one gasped. The nest was destroyed. The surviving swarm creatures fled deeper into the station. The Marines regrouped, counted their wounded, and kept moving. The Council fleet arrived 4 hours after the humans had docked. Fleet Admiral watched the tactical displays in disbelief. "The humans are where?" he asked. "They've cleared sections B through F," his tactical officer reported. "They've rescued 6,000 civilians, and they've destroyed the primary swarm nest." "That's impossible. Those sections are irradiated." "The humans say the radiation is manageable," the officer replied, reading the report. "They also report minimal casualties, 12 wounded, none dead." Pulled up the video feeds from the station. What he saw disturbed him deeply. Humans fighting in toxic atmospheres. Humans pushing through radiation that would kill his species instantly. Humans engaging the swarm in hand-to-hand combat when any sane species would retreat. And the humans were winning. In one video, a human Marine held alone while civilians evacuated. The Marine was surrounded by swarm corpses. When reinforcements arrived, the Marine was still fighting, still holding the line. In another video, humans were laughing while under fire. One of them was singing what the translator identified as an ancient war song. "What kind of species sings in combat?" asked nobody in particular. Dr. Mira sent her first report too. She had dissected several swarm creatures. "Their weakness is cold," she reported. "Extreme cold makes them sluggish. Also, they can't adapt quickly. They're hive-minded, which means they follow patterns. Disrupt the pattern, disrupt the hive." "How did you discover this?" asked. "I studied them while they were trying to kill me," Mira said matter-of-factly. "Also, one of your medical teams said I shouldn't be in the combat zone. I disagree." Looked at his command staff. They all wore the same expression, a mixture of awe and fear. "Get me Colonel Sung-Ho," ordered. When Sung-Ho appeared on the screen, he was still in his armor. Swarm blood covered his suit. Behind him, Marines were setting up defensive positions. "Colonel, the station is secure. You can withdraw," said. "Negative," Sung-Ho replied. "We've located another nest in the lower levels. We're moving to destroy it." "Colonel, you've been fighting for 17 hours without rest." And Sung-Ho looked genuinely confused. "Sir, we're just getting started." Ended the call. He sat in his command chair, trying to process what he had witnessed. His tactical officer spoke quietly. "Admiral, there's something you should know. The humans call what they did today a standard deployment. This is normal for them." "That cannot be normal," said. "Sir, I accessed their military databases. On Earth, their soldiers train to fight for days without sleep. They train in deserts, in frozen wastelands, in jungles where everything is poisonous. They call it survival training." Felt something he had not felt in his 50 years of military service. Fear. Not fear of the swarm, fear of humanity. "Send a message to the Council," said slowly. "Tell them we need to reconsider humanity's classification. They're not just." "What should we classify them as?" the officer asked. Watched the video feeds again. Humans fighting in hell itself and treating it like a normal day. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know one thing. If we ever make enemies of humanity, we will lose." On station, Colonel Sung-ho and his Marines prepared for the next assault. They had saved thousands of lives. They had destroyed the swarm's foothold. And they had shown the galaxy something terrifying. Humans didn't just survive on it, they thrived on it. And now they had brought that mentality to the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. The war against the swarm entered its third week. 3 planets had already fallen. The Council forces were exhausted. Most alien species could only fight for 2 or 3 days before needing extended rest. Their military doctrine was based on quick, decisive battles. Long campaigns drained them physically and mentally. Humans were different. Major One stood on the command deck of the destroyer Hope. She had been awake for 36 hours. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharp. Around her, her team worked at their stations. They had been deployed continuously for 17 days. "Major, the Council is requesting our rotation schedule," said Commander from the Fleet Coordination Center. "Tell them we'll rotate when the job is done," one replied. There was a pause. "Major, their medical staff says continuous deployment beyond 48 hours is physiologically impossible." One smiled grimly. "For them, maybe." On the planet below, Private Dong crouched in a crater. His squad had been holding this position for 11 hours. Swarm creatures attacked every hour like clockwork. The creatures never seemed to tire. But neither did Dong. He was 19 years old. 3 months ago, he had been a student on Earth. Now he was holding a defensive line against an alien hive mind. His rifle was hot from constant firing. His water was gone. His rations were gone. But he was still there. "Contact North Ridge," his squad leader called. Dong shifted his position. More swarm creatures came over the hill. He counted 20, then 30, then stopped counting and started shooting. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, Dong's squad had held. They always held. A council observer landed nearby. His name was Quinn, an avian species with bright blue feathers. He carried a camera. He was documenting the war for the galactic networks. "Private, you and your squad have been at this position for 11 hours, Quinn said. His translator made his voice sound chirpy. "When will you be relieved?" "When command sends relief," Dong said, cleaning his rifle. "But surely you need rest, food, medical attention." Dong looked at his hands. They were covered in small cuts and bruises. "I'm fine." "You're injured." Dong glanced at his hands. "These are scratches. I'll worry about them later." Quinn recorded everything. He couldn't understand it. His species needed rest every 8 hours. Extended periods without sleep caused physical collapse. Yet these humans had been fighting for days. He moved to another position. A human squad was preparing a meal. Quinn expected field rations, the compressed nutrition bars most soldiers ate. Instead, the humans were cooking. They had found local plants and were making soup. One of them was singing. Another was telling jokes. They were laughing. "How can you laugh?" Quinn asked. "You're in a war zone." A human woman looked up from her cooking. "If we don't laugh, we cry. Laughing is more fun." "But you're surrounded by death." "That's exactly why we laugh," she said. "Humans learned long ago that you can't let the darkness win. You fight it with light, with joy, with stubbornness." Quinn recorded it all. That night, he sent his footage to the galactic networks. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched humans fight. They watched humans hold positions that should have fallen. They watched humans sing in trenches. They watched humans crack jokes while under fire. Alien psychologists declared it impossible. Alien military strategists called it insanity. But the footage didn't lie. Major One was leading a special operations team deep behind swarm lines. They had been dropped 11 days ago. Their mission was to locate the swarm's forward base and mark it for orbital strikes. But something went wrong. The swarm found them. They lost communication with the fleet. They were cut off. Most species would surrender. Some would try to flee. The humans did neither. "We adapt," One told her team. "We're behind enemy lines, good. The enemy won't expect us here." They had lost their supplies in the ambush. No food, no water, limited ammunition. They were in hostile territory with no support. So they hunted. Humans were persistent hunters. For millions of years, they had tracked animals across vast distances. They could follow prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Now they used those same skills against the swarm. One's team tracked swarm patrols. They ambushed them. They took their biomatter for food. They captured swarm weapons. They learned the enemy's patterns. "They're following the same patrol routes," one team member observed. "Like clockwork." "Because they're a hive mind," one said. "They're efficient, but they lack flexibility. That's their weakness." For 11 days, One's team survived in hell. They fought when necessary. They hid when smart. They never stopped moving forward. On day 9, they found the forward base. It was massive. Thousands of swarm creatures, bioships being grown, weapons being produced. "We need to report this," a team member said. "Communication is still down," another replied. One studied the base, then she smiled. "Then we'll have to paint the target ourselves." They spent 2 days preparing. They built improvised explosives from captured swarm materials. They mapped patrol patterns. They planned their escape route. On day 11, they struck. 8 humans against thousands of swarm creatures. Any sane species would call it suicide. Humans called it a fair fight. They planted their explosives on the bioship construction areas. They set fires in the resource storage. They created chaos. And when the swarm responded with overwhelming force, the humans ran. But they didn't run randomly. They ran in a specific pattern, leading the swarm away from the base. Because human communication was down, but their beacons still worked. And one had activated her emergency beacon 2 hours before the attack. Commander received the signal. He was coordinating fleet movements from the Council command ship. When he saw where the beacon was located, his blood ran cold. "That's deep in swarm territory," he said. "That team has been missing for 11 days. They can't possibly still be alive." "Sir, the beacon is moving," his tactical officer reported. "And there's a massive swarm concentration following it." "Understood immediately. They're marking the target. All ships converge on those coordinates. Prepare orbital bombardment." "Sir, our people are still in the target zone." "Trust me," said, "they have a plan." The human fleet arrived. They saw the situation immediately. A small group running through rough terrain. Behind them, thousands of swarm creatures in pursuit. "Fire on my mark," commanded. On the ground, One and her team ran. They had been running for 3 hours. Most species would have collapsed. Humans had evolved to run for days. "There," one team member shouted, "a ravine ahead, deep and narrow." They jumped. It was a 6-meter drop. Landing wrong could break bones. They had no choice. All 8 landed, several injuries. Nobody stopped moving. They crawled deep into the ravine into a small cave. "Beacon off now," one ordered. The beacon died. Seconds later, the orbital bombardment began. The sky turned to fire. The swarm base was obliterated. Thousands of creatures died in seconds. The forward base that would have launched attacks on 3 more planets was destroyed. When the bombardment stopped, rescue teams landed. They found One's team in the cave, all 8 alive. Injured, starving, exhausted, but alive. "Major One, report," the rescue commander said. One stood, her armor was damaged. Her face was covered in dirt and blood. She had survived 11 days behind enemy lines. She had completed her mission. She had led her team to safety. "Mission accomplished," she said, then she collapsed. The medical team rushed forward. They worked frantically. One medic looked at his scanner in disbelief. "She has 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and severe dehydration. How was she standing?" Another medic looked at the rest of one's team. "They all have similar injuries. They've been functioning on pure willpower." "That's not medically possible." "For us maybe, but these are humans." Quinn the Observer recorded the rescue. His footage went across the galaxy. Major One and her team became legends. 8 humans surviving against impossible odds. Private Dong continued to hold his position. He had been there for 19 hours now. Council forces had tried to relieve him 3 times. Each time, Dong refused. "The position hasn't been secured yet," he said. "Private, you need rest." "I need this position held." The swarm attacked again, a massive wave. Dong's squad was down to 4 soldiers. They had minimal ammunition. The situation was hopeless. That's when Dong learned what humans do when faced with the impossible. They fight anyway. He held the line for 6 more hours. When relief finally arrived, Dong was standing on a mountain of swarm corpses. His rifle was empty. He had been using a combat knife for the last hour. The relief commander stared at the scene. "How many were you?" "4," Dong said. His voice was hoarse. "How many attacked?" Dong looked at the bodies. "Didn't count, couldn't afford to." That night, Commander addressed the Council Military Command. "You asked why humanity is effective in this war. I have your answer." He played the footage. Dong holding a position for a full day. One's team surviving behind enemy lines. Human soldiers singing while under fire. "This is not normal," an alien commander protested. "This violates every principle of combat fatigue." "For you, yes," agreed. "But humans evolved differently. They didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being stronger than their predators. They did it by outlasting them. Humans can track prey for days. They can fight for weeks. They don't just survive in harsh conditions. They excel in them." The alien commanders watched in silence. "You rotate your troops every 48 hours, continued. "Humans have been deployed for 17 days straight. You see this as a liability. We see it as Tuesday." One alien asked the question they were all thinking. "What happens when the war ends? What do we do with a species that refuses to quit?" Smiled. "You make very sure they remain your friends." Victory was close. The Council forces had pushed the swarm back across 5 systems. 3 weeks of brutal fighting had cost thousands of lives, but the tide had turned. The enemy was retreating. Captain stood in the command center of the flagship Unity. Around him, alien commanders celebrated. Messages of congratulation flowed between fleets. Some species had already begun discussing demobilization. But something felt wrong. Lieutenant Wu called. She approached, her tactical pad in hand. "What do you think?" Wu had been studying the swarm's movements. Her face was troubled. "They're retreating too easily, sir. The swarm is a hive mind. They don't understand fear. They don't retreat to save themselves. Maybe we hurt them badly enough. Or maybe we haven't seen their real strength yet." Trusted Wu's instincts. He called for a meeting with the Council commanders. Fleet Admiral was in good spirits when entered the briefing room. "Captain, your forces performed admirably. The war is nearly won." "Admiral, I request permission to send scouts to the outer rim sectors." Santeni twitched. "The swarm came from there. Those areas are too dangerous." "Exactly. If we don't know what's out there, we can't claim victory." High Commander, the scaled reptilian commander, rumbled in agreement. "The human makes sense. We assumed the swarm's full strength based on what we've fought, but we have no proof." Was reluctant but agreed. 3 days, that's all I can spare. The scout ships launched that night, led the mission personally. Wu came with him, along with Corporal One and a team of 20 Marines. They jumped to the outer rim. The journey took 40 hours. What they found made blood run cold. Space was filled with thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. They hung in the void like a massive sleeping fleet. Each ship was larger than anything the Council fielded, and at the center something huge pulsed with sickly light. "What is that?" one whispered. Dr. Mira scanned from the science station. "Biomass readings are off the scale, that central structure. I think it's the swarm queen, the source of the hive mind." "How big is this fleet?" asked. Wu ran the calculations. Her face went pale. "At least 10,000 ships, maybe more, sir. Everything we've fought so far was just the scouting force." The command crew stared at the display. The swarm's true strength was 100 times larger than what they had faced. The Council's entire fleet combined couldn't fight this. "We need to report this immediately," Mira said. They jumped back to Council space. The celebration stopped the moment transmitted the scout data. The Council chamber was in chaos. Commanders shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate retreat. Others called for fortifying the inner worlds and abandoning the outer colonies. Ambassador Nuss stood with the human delegation. She watched the panic spread like wildfire. "They're going to abandon billions of people," she said quietly. Stood, his voice cut through the chaos. "Counselors, listen to me." The room quieted slightly, activated the holographic display. "Yes, the swarm's fleet is massive. Yes, our forces are outnumbered, but we have something they don't." "And what is that?" asked. "Hope, courage, those things don't destroy, Captain." "Intelligence," said firmly. "The swarm is a hive mind. They're efficient but predictable. Dr. Mira has identified the Queen as their central control. If we eliminate her, the fleet collapses." "Getting to the Queen is impossible," said. "She's at the center of that fleet, protected by thousands of ships." Smiled grimly. "Nothing is impossible, just difficult, and difficult is what humans do best." Wu stepped forward. "I've designed an operation. We call it Operation Torch." She activated a tactical display. "We use our fastest ships to punch through the swarm line. A boarding team strikes the Queen ship directly. Meanwhile, the main fleet engages the swarm forces to prevent them from organizing a counterattack." The alien commanders stared at the plan. Finally spoke. "This is suicide. You're asking for volunteers to fly into the heart of an enemy fleet, board a hostile, fight through thousands of swarm creatures, and kill their queen. The mathematics say your success rate is less than 1%. "The mathematics have never met humanity," Colonel Sung-ho said. He had entered the chamber with Major One. "We volunteer for the boarding team." "I as well," said one. "And me," added Dong, who had been promoted after his defensive stand. More human soldiers stepped forward. 100, 200, 500. Soon, 5,000 Marines had volunteered for what every tactical analysis called a suicide mission. Looked at the Council. "Give us 72 hours. If we fail, retreat with your fleets, save who you can, but give us a chance to end this." The Council argued for hours, finally stood. "I fought humans on station. I watched them do the impossible. If they say they can kill the Queen, I believe them. I commit my fleet to support Operation Torch." Other commanders slowly agreed. The operation was authorized. The preparation took 2 days. Human ships were reinforced. Weapons were loaded. Battle plans were reviewed. The soldiers knew what they faced. Most would not survive. On the eve of the operation, walked through the Marine decks. He found Dong writing a letter. "Letter home?" asked. "To my parents," Dong said, "just in case." "You don't have to do this. You've already proven yourself." Dong looked up. His young face was serious. "Sir, I'm 19. 3 months ago, my biggest worry was a college exam. Now I'm about to attack an alien hive fleet. It's terrifying. Then why volunteer? Because someone has to, and if not me then who? Dong smiled slightly. Besides, humans are stubborn. We don't know when to quit. I figure that's our advantage. Found similar conversations throughout the ship, soldiers saying goodbye, making peace with death, but not one asked to be removed from the mission. In the command center, Wu reviewed the battle plans one more time. Na found her there. You know this is insane, Na said. Yes, Wu agreed. You're still going. Of course. Why? Wu looked at the tactical display. Because the galaxy needs to see what humans can do, not for pride, not for glory, but because if we succeed, we prove that courage and determination can overcome impossible odds, and if we fail, well, at least we fail trying. The day of Operation Torch arrived. 300 human ships gathered, 5,000 Marines prepared to board. The Council fleet, twice that size, would provide support and distraction. Stood on the Bridge of Unity. Around him his crew worked with calm efficiency. They were scared. They were tired, but they were ready. Captain, Wu said, all ships report ready. Opened the fleet-wide channel. Every human ship heard his voice. This is Captain. In a few minutes, we're going to do something that every tactical analysis says is impossible. We're going to fly into the heart of an enemy fleet and kill their queen. He paused. The Council thinks we're crazy. Maybe they're right. But you know what? Humanity has been doing impossible things since we first looked at the stars and decided to go there. Today is just another day. We're not doing this for glory. We're doing this because billions of lives depend on us. We're doing this because it's right. And we're doing this because we're human, and humans don't quit. He looked at his crew. When Earth's ancestors faced predators bigger and stronger than them, they didn't hide. They hunted. When they faced environments that should have killed them, they adapted. When they faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, they found a way. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to be human, not our strength, not our technology, but our refusal to surrender, our absolute stubborn determination to fight for what matters. His voice grew fierce. The swarm thinks we're trapped out here with them. They're wrong. They're trapped out here with us. All ships prepare to jump. Operation Torches go. The human fleet vanished in bursts of light. The Council fleet followed seconds later. They jumped to the outer rim where the swarm waited. The moment they arrived, space erupted in chaos. The swarm fleet activated. Thousands of converged on the human vessels. All ships defensive formation, ordered. Boarding teams prepare to launch. The battle began, the largest space engagement in galactic history. Human ships pushed forward, their armor absorbing hits that would destroy Council vessels. They fired relentlessly, burning paths through the swarm fleet. Dominion forces flanked them, drawing away swarm ships. Fleet provided long-range support, but it was the humans who drove the spear into the enemy's heart. Sung Ho led the boarding teams. They launched in small, fast ships. They dodged between. Swarm creatures tried to intercept them. Some human ships were destroyed, but most got through. They reached the Queen's ship. It was massive, an organic fortress floating in space. Its surface writhed with defensive structures. All teams begin boarding, Sung Ho ordered. The Marines breached the hull. They entered the alien ship, and the real fight began. Back on Unity watched the tactical display. The human fleet was taking massive casualties. 20 ships destroyed, 30, 50. Sir, we're losing too many ships, Wu reported. I know, said, but we hold. We give the boarding teams every second they need. In the Council command ship, watched in horror and awe, the humans were dying. Their ships were being torn apart, but they didn't retreat. They didn't falter. They just kept fighting. What kind of species does this? An aide whispered. Knew the answer. A species that refused to accept defeat. a species that would rather die fighting than live in surrender. On the Queen's ship, Sung Ho and his Marines fought through hell, and they pushed forward, always forward, toward the heart of the vessel where the Queen waited. Inside the Queen's ship, Colonel Sung Ho and his Marines moved through passages that looked like the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. The air was toxic, filled with spores that would kill most species in minutes. The humans sealed their helmets and pushed forward. Swarm creatures attacked from every direction. The corridors were narrow, perfect for ambushes. The Marines formed tight formations covering each other. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their hands. Major One's team was on the left flank. They had been fighting for 2 hours. Half her team was wounded, but they held their section, keeping the path clear for other teams. "Contact ahead," a Marine shouted. "It's a big one." A massive swarm creature emerged. It was 3 times the size of the others, with armor that deflected pulse rounds. It charged down the corridor. One made a split-second decision. "Grenades, everything you have." 6 grenades flew. The explosions rocked the corridor. The creature stumbled but didn't fall. It was 5 meters away now. 4, 3. One stepped forward and emptied her rifle into what looked like its eyes. The creature collapsed. "Keep moving," she ordered. Corporal One's team breached a larger chamber. Inside, hundreds of swarm creatures nested. There was no way around. They had to go through. "Sir, we're outnumbered," a Marine said. One checked his ammunition, almost empty. He looked at his team, 5 Marines, 5 against hundreds. "We don't need to kill them all," one said. "We just need to make them wish they'd never seen a human." They attacked. It was chaos. Close quarters combat in zero gravity. Humans and swarm creatures grappled in the darkness. The air filled with screams and gunfire. One fought with everything he had. His rifle clicked empty. He switched to his sidearm. That ran dry too. He drew his combat knife. A swarm creature grabbed him from behind. Its mandibles clicked near his helmet. One twisted, breaking free. He drove his knife into the creature's head. It died, but 2 more took its place. He was bleeding. His armor was breached. Swarm acid had burned through in 3 places. By all logic, he should retreat. Instead, he roared and kept fighting. Private Dong was with the Central Assault Team. They had reached the deepest part of the ship. The biological readings were off the scale. They were close to the Queen. The corridor opened into a massive chamber, and there she was. The Swarm Queen was enormous. Her body filled half the chamber. Organic tendrils connected her to the ship's systems, and around her 1,000 swarm creatures stood guard. "There's too many," a Marine whispered. Sung Ho stepped into the chamber. He had lost 60% of his team getting here, but 47 Marines remained. 47 humans facing impossible odds. "Form up," Sung Ho ordered. "Overlapping fields of fire, we do this together." The Marines formed a wedge. They advanced slowly. The swarm creatures attacked. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. 47 humans fought 1,000 swarm creatures in a chamber that was pure nightmare. The walls were alive. The floor tried to trap them. The air was toxic, and the Queen's psychic presence pressed down on their minds. Most species would have broken. The psychic assault alone would have shattered their will, but humans were different. The Queen tried to dominate their thoughts. She pushed waves of fear into their minds. She showed them visions of death and defeat. She tried to make them give up. But human minds were complex. Millions of years of evolution had given them something unique: imagination. The ability to believe in things that weren't real. The ability to hope even in darkness. The ability to choose courage over fear. The Queen's psychic assault failed. "She's in our heads," a Marine shouted. "I can feel her." "Then show her what we're made of," Sung Ho replied. The battle raged. Dong found himself separated from the main group. 3 swarm creatures cornered him. His rifle was damaged. His armor was failing. He had a cracked rib and couldn't breathe properly. He had every reason to die. Instead, he remembered something his grandmother once told him. Humans survived because we were too stubborn to quit. When the world said no, we said, "Watch me." Dong picked up a piece of broken metal from the floor. He faced the 3 creatures, and he attacked. He didn't fight with skill. He didn't fight with grace. He fought with pure human stubbornness. When they knocked him down, he got back up. When they wounded him, he struck back. When they thought he was finished, he proved them wrong. He killed 1 creature, then a second. The third one wounded him badly, but before it could finish him, one arrived. Together, they brought it down. "You're insane," one gasped. "I'm human," Dong replied. "Same thing." At the center of the chamber, Sung Ho and his team pushed toward the queen. The defenders were overwhelming them. For every swarm creature they killed, 2 more appeared. "We're not going to make it," one said. She was beside Sung Ho, firing her last magazine. "Yes, we are," Sung Ho said, "because we're human and humans don't quit." He looked at his remaining team, 23 Marines left, all wounded, all exhausted, all ready to die if necessary. "One final push," Sung Ho said. "For Earth, for the galaxy, for everyone we're trying to save." The Marines charged. They broke through the swarm defensive line through sheer determination. They reached the queen. She was massive up close. Her presence filled their minds with rage and fear, but the humans fought through it. They planted explosives on her body. They fired into her vital organs. They did everything they could. The queen shrieked. It was a sound that transcended physical hearing, a psychic scream that echoed through the hive mind. Throughout the swarm fleet, creatures faltered. One drove her combat knife into what looked like a nerve cluster. The queen's scream intensified. One fired his last grenade directly into her mouth. The explosion came from inside. And Sung Ho placed the final charge right at her core. "For humanity," he said, and triggered it. The explosion tore through the queen's body. Her psychic presence vanished like a light switching off. Throughout the swarm creatures stopped moving. The hive mind was severed. In space, the swarm fleet went dark. 10,000 suddenly had no coordination, no orders, no purpose. They drifted aimlessly. On Unity's bridge, Captain watched the tactical display change. The swarm fleet, it's not fighting anymore. Wu checked the readings. "The hive mind is offline, sir. I think they did it. They killed the queen." The bridge erupted in cheers. Across the human and council fleets, celebration began. They had won. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 5,000 Marines who boarded the Queen's ship, only 47 walked out. The survivors were covered in wounds and acid burns. Some could barely stand, but they had completed the mission. Sung Ho was the last to leave. He carried Dong, who was unconscious but alive. Behind them, the Queen's ship began to break apart. Its biological systems were failing without the Queen's control. The rescue ships picked up the survivors. Medical teams worked frantically. Dr. Mira supervised the treatment, pushing the medical staff to save every Marine they could. The casualties were severe. Of 300 human ships, only 94 remained operational. 68% of the human force had been killed or wounded. But they had won. 3 months later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The chamber was packed. Representatives from every member species attended. At the center stood the human delegation. Spoke first. "The Council has reviewed the events of the Swarm War. Humanity's contribution was unprecedented. Against impossible odds, you not only fought but prevailed." High Commander stood. "The Council Military Command has studied your tactics, your endurance, your refusal to accept defeat. We must formally acknowledge what we have learned." He activated a display showing footage from the war. Dong holding his position for a full day, one surviving behind enemy lines, the final assault on the Queen's ship. Every tactical analysis said these things were impossible, continued. Yet humans accomplished them. You fought in conditions that would kill most species. You endured when others would collapse. You succeeded where failure seemed certain. Spoke again. Therefore, the Council formally classifies humanity as Apex-class warriors. The chamber filled with murmurs. Apex-class was the highest classification. It had never been awarded before. However, continued, and the chamber quieted, we must also place humanity under protected species status, Council Fear category. Ambassador Nuss stepped forward. Fear category, you honor us and fear us at the same time. Yes, said bluntly, because we have learned something disturbing. Humanity is too valuable as allies and too dangerous as enemies. Your military doctrine must be classified as weapon-level information. No species can be allowed to train under full human methods. The casualty rates would be catastrophic. You're saying we're too effective? Na asked. We're saying you're terrifying, replied honestly. In the Swarm War, Council forces suffered 30% casualties and considered it acceptable. Human forces suffered 68% casualties and called it victory. That level of commitment, that refusal to surrender, that absolute stubbornness, it frightens us. The chamber was silent. Na looked at the Council. You want to know why humans fight this way? I'll tell you. You all evolved on paradise worlds, worlds where cooperation meant survival, where working together let you thrive. You learned that the universe could be kind. She gestured to the human delegation. We evolved on Earth, a planet that tried to kill us every day. Predators hunted us, weather challenged us, disease tested us. We learned early that the universe doesn't care if you live or die, so we became stubborn, we became tough. We learned to fight for every breath. You see our refusal to quit as frightening. We see it as Tuesday. You think our tactics are insane. We think they're practical. You wonder how we keep fighting when wounded. We wonder why you stop. She looked directly at him. You asked what makes humanity fearsome. It's simple. We evolved where everything tried to kill us. So we learned to kill back, and we got very, very good at it. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were horrified, others were impressed, all were unsettled. Captain was promoted to admiral. He was tasked with leading joint human-alien military operations. His first order was to establish training programs, heavily modified versions of human tactics that wouldn't kill the alien trainees. Lieutenant Wu became an instructor. She taught alien special forces teams. Her class had a 90% dropout rate. The 10% who completed it became some of the galaxy's most effective soldiers. Dr. Mira established the Institute of Xenobiology. She studied how different species could work together, combining their strengths. Colonel Sung Ho retired from active duty, but he remained as an advisor, teaching others what humans had learned about persistence and determination. Major One recovered from her injuries. She led the new Special Operations Command, training elite teams for impossible missions. Corporal One and Private Dong both received medals. One became a lieutenant leading scout teams. Dong returned to Earth briefly, then volunteered for another tour. The galaxy needs someone, he said. Might as well be me. A monument was erected in Council space. It listed the names of all who died in the Swarm War. 47 species contributed names, but the human section was the longest. The Council held a ceremony attended by representatives from every member species. Observer Quinn, the avian journalist, wrote a final article. It was read across the galaxy. The title was simple. They call it humanity, the galaxy calls it terror. In the article, he wrote, I have watched humans fight. I have seen them laugh in the face of death. I have witnessed them refuse to surrender when surrender was the only logical choice. And I have learned something important. Humanity doesn't see themselves as warriors. They see themselves as survivors. Warriors train for battle. Survivors fight for life. That's the difference. That's what makes them fearsome. 1 year after the war, a new species made first contact with the Council. They were aggressive, warlike, confident. They demanded territory and resources. The Council held a meeting. The new species sat in the chamber, presenting their demands. Listened politely. Then he spoke. Before you make final demands, you should know something. See that delegation over there? He pointed to the human representatives. Those are humans. They are our allies. The new species looked at the humans. They seemed small, unimpressive, So, High Commander said, we suggest you reconsider your approach. Because the last species that threatened the Council faced those humans in battle. That species no longer exists. The new species laughed. Those small creatures, they don't look dangerous. Admiral stood. He walked to the center of the chamber. He didn't look threatening. He just looked like a person. But his eyes held the weight of the swarm war. We don't want to fight you, said calmly. We prefer peace. But if you force us to fight, understand this, we won't stop until it's over. We won't surrender. We won't retreat. We will keep coming no matter the cost until either you quit or we're all dead. He smiled slightly. And humans are very, very hard to kill. The new species looked at the Council. They saw the expressions on alien faces. Fear, respect, memory of the swarm war. The new species their demands. They accepted a standard diplomatic relationship. They never made threats again. As they left, their leader asked, are the humans really that dangerous? His antennae twitched. Let me tell you about the swarm war, he said. Let me tell you about a species that faced impossible odds and won through sheer refusal to quit. Let me tell you why the galaxy fears and respects humanity. And he told the story of Marines who fought for days without rest, of soldiers who held positions that should have fallen, of teams that survived behind enemy lines, of people who charged into certain death because it was the right thing to do. So yes, concluded, they are that dangerous, not because they want to be, but because they can't be anything else. Earth made them survivors, and survivors never ever quit. The new species listened, and they understood. In the years that followed, humanity became the Council's most trusted allies and most feared warriors. New members were always given the same advice. Whatever you do, don't make them angry. And in quiet moments, in bars and ships across the galaxy, soldiers of every species would share one universal truth: never fight a human, because they don't see losing as an option. They see it as a suggestion, and humans are really bad at taking suggestions.